Welcome, and we'll get started. So I'd like to start off this media briefing by welcoming Sonia Skinner as our acting CAO. I know I speak for council when I say that we're all looking forward to working with Sonia as we face the many challenges that lie ahead, working our way through the COVID-19 pandemic and restarting our economy. We're also looking forward to focusing and refocusing our efforts on important items that are works in progress, such as our community-based strategic plan refresh, the plans to invest the asset sale proceeds in our community, the official plan update, and the sustainability agenda in all of its forms. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our outgoing CAO, Freedom N, for his 2.5+ years of service to our community. We are very much the beneficiaries of his strong leadership of our municipal corporation and our community. So thank you, Fareed. I'll start off just by speaking briefly about the high water levels and the closure of Sunset Point Park. That has been necessary because of the damage to the trails that have been undermined in parts, as well as the debris that's been strewn across the trails. So we're asking our residents to stay out of Sunset Park while it is closed. Our Parks and Rec department is working on a solution to reroute the trail across the front of the park, keeping people away from the water. So please stay out. The water levels are extremely high. We're seeing that all across our waterfront. They are record high levels. And so the impacts are have been extreme in some areas, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe. I'm joined today by our Inspector Shannon, Chief Parr, and the President of our Optimist Club, Christopher Baines, because we're announcing a new initiative when we're partnering with the Optimist Club and working with town staff to coordinate the supply chain for personal protection equipment locally. We're looking with the help of the Optimist Club to connecting the many local companies and organizations, groups, and individuals who have been producing PPEs during this crisis. And they have been supplying the hospital, our local seniors' homes, and other organizations that operate residential programs, such as our Out of the Cold program, the Barbara Wider House, and E3. So first of all, I want to just do a shout out to all those local organizations and individuals who have been taking time and putting their efforts to creating these much needed PPE supplies. And I also want to welcome and thank the Optimist Club for taking on this important initiative. And with that being said, I'll turn it over to Christopher for comment. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. The Optimist Club of Collingwood's very pleased actually to be tangibly assisting our community in this time of need. And as the mayor indicated, specifically, we'll be taking on the job of the interface and distribution channel, if you will, from the suppliers at one side producing the PPE and distributing it to the facilities and organizations in Collingwood and environs that require that PPE. So very specific role. We're already, we've had a number of meetings onto this and we're already rolling on this. So the contacts are going out and being made and the deliveries will be happening, I would assume, next week.
Well, that's great news. And thank you, Christopher. And on a final note for me, it's a great pleasure to announce that we have selected 4 local artists to create an uplifting community mural on Huron Street at the Heritage Drive intersection. And the purpose of the mural is to inspire happiness and hope during these challenging times. The talented artists are Lily Findley, Ruth Hurdle, Sam Nellix, and Blaze Wiradharma. And so I invite everyone to keep your eyes on these murals and these artists as they work their creative magic on Huron Street in the coming weeks. So as you pass by, give them a honk or a wave of support as you drive by, ride by, or walk by. And with that, I will now pass it over to Inspector Shannon. Mary?
Thank you, Your Worship. So members at the Collingwood Detachment continue to actually be relatively busy responding to high volumes of calls for service. In some location, on some days, we're seeing, calls significantly increased from prior years, and it's a wide range of calls. We're most excited to be able to announce that we've received an additional temporary funding for 4 months to enhance our mental health response unit. So Community Health Center has provided emergency funding to fund an additional mental health crisis worker that will now allow us to have our mental health crisis team available in our communities 6 days a week for 10 hours for an extended 4 months. So it starts next Monday and will go through to the end of August. So just a phenomenal resource and an enhancement to an already very, very beneficial response team in our community and Wasaga Beach. So we're very excited and appreciative of that funding. And just on a positive note, I want to acknowledge exceptional investigation that came to a conclusion on Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, with a significant drug seizure in our community. Officers culminated a lengthy ongoing investigation that resulted in the arrest of 3 individuals. Most importantly was the items that were seized. So on the arrest, officers seized 1.4 kilograms of cocaine, approximately 180 grams of fentanyl, carfentanil, 27 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, drug paraphernalia, and over $27,500 in cash, as well as 2 handguns and ammunition. I cannot commend my officers enough for their diligence, and it's just a demonstration to our communities that our investigations have not stopped. We continue to be out in our communities advancing investigations of this nature, and I can't really measure the impact of getting drugs of that volume off our streets. We will not be able to measure the number of lives saved, the number of reduced emergency room visits from overdoses, from a seizure of this volume. It really, in speaking with officers here, it is likely one of the biggest drug seizures we have had in this community, but it demonstrates that that drugs are in our community. And it's just really a great acknowledgement to our community street crime unit from Collingwood and the Huronia West Detachment in getting these off the streets. So again, just kudos to the fine work of our officers. This past week, we responded to 35 COVID-related calls for service. Our officers are finding that the majority, some are not really legitimate calls. They're concerns with individuals, and we are seeing some better compliance with the measures related to COVID. So that is the OPP report.
Thank you very much, Inspector, and congratulations to you and your team on that significant drug bust. That's very good news. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Parr.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Quick update with fire. We seem that house fires are on the rise with us. We've this week alone have responded to 2. We usually do 8 in a year, and we're over 10 now. Again, what I've tried to promote in the past through social media and stuff is hashtag make noise at home, which shows you testing your smoke CO alarms. 2 of those fires did not have working smoke or CO alarms in there with young children in the house. So it's very important that we practice safe cooking while we're home. There's a lot more being done. We attend the cooking instead of ignoring it. And we also make sure that we have working CO smoke alarms. The one thing I have noticed is a lot of support from the OPP for fire services in these scenes. It's actually very comforting knowing that we're only worrying about one thing, and we have the OPP there with us helping out. So with also our local paramedic services supplying support also at these incidents. So we don't want to do this. As Inspector Shannon said, they're busy enough without other stuff. So if we can be a little bit more diligent with cooking and home safety. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chief. And I guess on a final note, before we open the floor to questions, just a reminder to our public, as we're hearing in the media and through our local health officials, we have been successful. The curve appears to be flattening. So we have reaped the benefits of the social restrictions and physical distancing. And so I would caution everyone to continue with that. Let's not lose sight of the importance of those of social restrictions right now, to continue to flatten that curve and bring it down so we can start to reopen. And we will be following the provincial guidelines for that process. But please keep going. As the weather gets nice, I know people will want to get out of the homes, and I can understand that. But we need to keep our foot to the pedal in terms of the social restrictions so that we make sure that we get through this first wave of the virus safely. Thank you very much, everyone. So I'll open it to the press now. Any questions from the press gallery?
There we go. I didn't realize I was muted. It's Ian Adams from The Connection. Question for Inspector Shannon. I was going to ask you about mental health calls, actually. And so is this an additional mental health team? Because there was one already, so now we'll have two, or how is that working?
Yeah, so we shared a crisis worker between the Wasaga Beach, Huronia West Detachment, and Collingwood. So essentially, my mental health crisis worker would be with the crisis worker 2 days a week, and then the crisis worker would be with the Huronia West Detachment 2 days a week. So with the enhanced funding for the 4-month period, we are now be operational 6 days a week for 10 hours with a uniformed officer with a crisis worker versus the 4 days a week prior to that.
Okay, so I just wonder, can you put sort of a tangible number to what kind of, or the number of mental health calls your folks are responding to right now?
I would have to get those numbers for you, Ian. I know that there's some days when they're actually just out doing proactive discussions with community residents, trying to ensure that members are aware of the different services that are available during this time, whether it be through connections with 211, and then the actual response for mental health calls for service. We can get those numbers looked at on Monday and get them over to you, Ian.
Okay, and just a bit more of a follow-up to all of this. I just wonder, in terms of domestics, and I think that's something that we've been hearing about, not only locally, but across probably Ontario and the country. I just wonder what the situation is like for your members and the number of domestic calls that they're responding to.
Yeah, again, I don't know if we've seen a significant increase over the prior year. I do know that our members continue to respond to domestic calls for service. Certainly, some of them are non-criminal, and it's a situation where arguments are erupting in households, and concerns, whether it be from neighbors, are getting called in. But certainly that's another item that we can actually get numbers for you on Monday, and we can have our media officer send those over to you.
And then in terms of the patrols, and I saw the guys out in the ATVs on the weekend, are we still sort of that education period, or have they actually issued any sort of tickets related to the emergency order?
No, so we did have units out this past weekend, and our big concern was with the opening of the fishing season, and what our officers experienced for the most part was compliance from the public, a respect on the social distancing, and we really didn't experience the problems that we were prepared to respond to. So we were quite pleased with the community's level of respect with regards to the civil order, the emergency order, and their adherence to it. So that was a good news story for us.
Cool. Someone else.
Thanks,
Mandy
Ian.
from Rogers TV here. I have two questions, one for the fire chief and one for the mayor. Fire chief, is there still a fire ban in place right now for people who want to have their backyard fires?
Hi, Mandy. No, there isn't. We are not in the provincial fire zone. That's where the province put a ban, full fire ban. So in the town of Collingwood, we are not under a fire ban. We're asking people to follow the rules that can be found on our website through the fire permit process. If anybody had a permit, we are saying that go ahead and use it, but we're advising to follow the rules like any other year. And anybody else who's phoned in and requested, we've issued permits. And then when things get back to normal, we'll move forward with the looking at it. But at this time, with the rain, the amount of rain and the greening up, I'm very confident it's safe for them to do that, and I also believe it's a good activity for families in these times, where at least they can gather in their backyard as long as they're following the rules in our fire bylaw.
Thank you. I was curious about that with the weekend looking so nice. And my second question for the mayor is in regards to, I just received a press release this morning from the town of New Tecumseth stating that they basically shut down everything until September 7th. Is the town of Collingwood thinking they will be doing something similar, or are you playing it on a more of a week-by-week basis? What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Mandy. I think we're looking at on a week-by-week basis. We're following the lead of the province, and the Premier did speak in sort of high level about the three phases of the restart for opening businesses and opening or lifting the restrictions right now. So we'll be following the lead of the province, and we will certainly be doing. I mean, top of mind is the safety of our residents and flattening the curve. But we will be, I think, doing it on a week-by-week basis and in a very measured and intentional way, making sure that safety is number one, but also looking at ways we can start reopening the local businesses and economy.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, if there are no other questions.
Well, actually, Ryan, sorry, I was waiting to see if anybody hopped in there, so I'm going to
Okay.
hop in with another one. And this is for Ross. And you talked about the fires. Is it strictly related to like cooking or what have you, or are there? Because I did note you did have one, I guess Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday night. It was a basement apartment on 5th Street, I think. Was that a cooking related, or how'd you define that one, that particular house fire or apartment fire?
Yeah, out of the 8 I had reported on, I think 6 were related to cooking. The last one there wasn't a basement apartment, it was a basement fire, and that was unsafe storage of flammable materials and liquids.
That was the one from Wednesday on, I think, 5th? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I like when I have more panelists, there's less questions for me. So thanks for the great week, everyone. And we'll look forward to a nice weekend and enjoy it. So, and thanks, Christopher, for taking the time to join us today.
My pleasure.
So with that being said, goodbye, everyone. Enjoy the weekend, and thanks a lot.